Well, we've been pretty hard to beat so far in our second season up in the Bundesliga with Jahn Regensburg. Let's see if that continues as we take on Wolfsburg away in the second round of DFB-Pokal with quite a rotated team before then. We take on an RB Leipzig team that we've really struggled against so far in the save, and of course, they have Mr. Klopp in charge now. Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 67 of Rookie to Royalty here on Shaun Does FM with Jahn Regensburg. I hope you're doing well and come up today. We've got Wolfsburg away in the second round of the DFB-Pokal and then also away RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga, which should be a 4th versus 5th clash, but those guys, as well as most teams around us, do have a game in hand. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to those two games coming up in today's episode. But this comes off back yesterday when we took on Gladbach, an absolute goal fest, and Dortmund in the complete opposite there in the early stages of October. If you missed that one, I'll leave a link to it over in the top right corner. Thankfully to pick up a 2-0 win over Werder Bremen in between those games. But we come back off the back of just 2 I've played off camera. First up, Corona Kielce in the Conference League. The Conference League already, if it's not Atlanta, it's looking like it's going to be pretty easy work for us this season. A 4-1 win there, despite a red card to Joshua Rawlins, with just 25 minutes left. So the beefy by that stage would have already done a fair bit of damage. You can see off the back of that red card, it was a 1-1 draw. But Tim Albert, someone who's a previous youth intake player here at Jahn Regensburg, opened the scoring for an absolutely wonderful goal too, to make it 1-0 very early on. A couple of early goals there in the second half, an own goal, and then Tygo Lamb. Before that red card, Max Meyer made it 4-0 just before they then grabbed a goal back eventually through Kamil Sornit. But considering the team we put out for this game, you'll see it there in behind my face and just above it, I'm pretty happy with that so far, being able to really rotate in these Conference League games and still do a very good job. So that's quite encouraging so far. In the Conference League, we're looking very good on top of the table with a perfect record and the best goal differential tied with Atalanta. That will be a very interesting game, albeit not too sure if there'll be too much riding on it by the time we do get to that stage. It's our second to last one in the league phase of the Conference League. We might be coming back for that one in tomorrow's episode, because off the back of today's one, we've got a pretty easy little run there in the Bundesliga off the back of that Leipzig game. But unfortunately, we then did go back to the Bundesliga, and it was my first game played off the back of editing the last video. I'm wondering if they might have stuffed up my 4-3-3, because I have reloaded the game, because a 0-0 draw there as we took on at that stage bottom place Freiburg, and at home as well. Obviously Freiburg, a decent team. They got promoted from the Zwei Bundesliga last season. It took us until extra time or even penalties, I think it was, to get past them in the DFB-Pokal. So we kind of knew these guys might be tough. I was hoping with our 4-3-3 that would have the edge over them, but no, actually a bit disappointing we were in this game. But thankfully, we did manage to hold on for a 0-0 draw, because stats-wise Freiburg probably did deserve something from that game. So a little bit concerning there that we did not pick up a win in that one against bottom of the league, but it does mean we hold on to 4th spot for now. Obviously, that Leipzig game second up in today's episode is going to be quite big, and also there's a fair few teams behind us with a game in hand. So a bit disappointing that we couldn't sneak our way up to 17 points with that Freiburg game. That would have been ideal, would have made sure that we don't drop too far down when that game in hand for all those teams does get played. But currently sitting in a Champions League qualifying spot, probably more realistically though, it's the Europa by a Conference League qualifying one, but pretty decent. We are holding on for draws in games that last season it felt like we were losing. So let's see if that continues, but I'm hopeful first up we can actually pick up a win. We take on Wolfsburg all the way down in 13th. They continue to struggle in this save, despite the fact they could have hired us last season. They went for Mark von Bommel. They might be regretting it, because they are down in 13th for me, a prediction of 7th though last season. They did go quite deep in the Europa League. They come into this one having just broken a pretty long run there of not picking up wins with a 4-1 result away at Cologne. So to be fair, that's not too bad at all. But before then, they were struggling big time. So we'll see how we get on here in this cup game. We did take them on not that long ago in the Bundesliga with that 4-3-3, and that was actually one of the games that made me decide that yesterday we'd come back and just use that 4-3-3, because we freshed them 5-2, albeit that game was very open. They did score early, but thankfully off the back of that, we did start to tear them to shreds, especially in that second half. So I'm pretty hopeful with the same formation, we can pick up a result in pretty much the same game just a month and a half later, albeit we do have some issues here with our squad for this cup game. First up, a couple of injuries that players are almost back from Fabian Fernandes, some pulled knee ligaments, and Max Meyer, a gashed upper leg. They're both out for one more day, so it does mean currently that we are super weak in that left wing position. Also, pretty much our entire first team, as you'll see down here, come into this one on a heavy workload, and the ones who are not on a heavy workload, and the likes of our goalkeeper and our Wusu Adulo is quite injury prone despite that. So because of that, we are going with pretty much a full rotation for this cup game. To be fair, these guys have been doing really well for us in that conference league, so I'm hopeful they can deliver here in this DFB-Pokal. Kind of hopeful too that Wolfsburg might be rotating for this game, but seeing as this season they're not in Europe, that might be a little bit more unlikely. But thankfully got players like Lazar just coming back from injury, which does allow us the chance here to rotate. The only player who ideally would be giving a rest to here in this team is probably Johann Berkweer with our current left wing situation, but he does need to play Fabian Fernandes just fit enough to make his way on the bench, but ideally won't have to use him too much. But fingers crossed here, the 4-3-3 that's been doing a really good job for us, and obviously that 5-2 win it picked up against this team a month and a half ago can deliver yet again, and we can make our way through to the third round of the DFB-Pokal. Obviously last season we made it all the way through to the semi-finals, so ideally we'd go quite deep in this comp again, but obviously this season we've also got European football, albeit at the moment it's not proving too bad, but second half of the season, which we surely will still be playing in that conference league in the way that it's going currently, because those teams outside of the big ones, the Atlantas, the Newcastle Uniteds, all those sort of teams are absolutely easy to beat. We can put out pretty much our under-19s and get the job done by a good couple of goals. So far the conference league not weighing us down too much. So fingers crossed that does mean we can progress pretty well here in this DFB-Pokal this season. Just a bit of a bummer, the timing of this cup game in particular. Our players quite tight off the back of that Freiburg game where unfortunately our first teamers could not score against the worst team in the league. So a bit disappointed with that effort, especially with this 4-3-3, which before then had been a bit of a goal-scoring machine ever since that Wolfsburg game where we bet them 5-2. So hopefully can do the same here. But with a rotated team, it's a little bit of skepticism I do have going into this one. I'm hopeful that we can deliver, but we'll see if it actually does come true. And also probably worst case scenario in this game is one of them just happens there to Berkweer, picks up a yellow card. But the other worst case scenario probably would be if this one did go to extra time or a penalty shootout, with how tired our squad is in general. Hopefully our first teamers will be fit and available for that RB Leipzig game. We do come back, or that's a team that so far in this save, they've just completely been able to shut us down both times we've played them. Hopefully with this 4-3-3 can find a way to cut them open, especially with a new manager, even if it is Jürgen Klopp. But so far we're the team here on the front foot stats wise, but that's not saying too much because only 2 shots so far in the first half of this game. Eventually a highlight, a corner in our favour. Looking for Kovacic there at the near post. Eventually Kamara does get a header off, but it's a looping one and Grabara can claim it quite safely. So at the moment, this game has been very quiet, quite similar to the Dortmund one from yesterday's episode, but now Van Persie does get in behind ever so slightly, takes on a bit of a shot there from a very, very tight angle, almost just inside of the byline, and Lukic can claim it. Thankfully, he did throw that to Hubner. I have seen before in FM, those ones can sometimes end up in the back of the net, but now we try and do something here on the counter-attack. So this is a very long highlight. Nice ball through there to Levente Toft, but unfortunately, that one goes over the bar. That might be the sole highlight of the first half, where to be fair, we've been quite dominant even with this heavily rotated team, but unfortunately, it is still 0-0. I'm probably going to bring on here a couple of first-team players with those yellow cards that we are sitting on now. Butera might not be the worst idea here for Kovacic. He does need the game time when we can give it to him, and to Berkweer, that yellow card, to be fair, the situation with Fernandes does mean that for now we probably shouldn't look to take him off. Also Henning at left back, that's a little bit of a concern, him on a 6.4, but I think for now we'll see if those guys can improve in the second half. Obviously to Berkweer, if we can leave him out there until the hour mark, that's probably a nice way to bring Fernandes back into the squad. So hopefully he might be fit for a start in that RB Leipzig game. So not as many changes as I usually make there at halftime, given the options we do have available for this game. But so far, we're actually playing quite well. just haven't really seen too much of it here in the match engine. But now we're on the front foot here, early highlights in the second half. But unfortunately, Wolfsburg do head that one away. And actually, good chance on here on the counter-attack. Rollins there with a pretty cynical foul, but Wolfsburg here are still on the attack. And unfortunately, Henning takes out their one of their attackers, the wrong one, because Blockhorse can put that one away and make it 1-0 with pretty much Wolfsburg first attack of the entire game. So unfortunately, we might be on here for a little bit of an FMing, somewhat expected with the team that we have put out, but really that's some poor defensive work there from both our wingbacks. Rollins with the silly foul. He has improved a little bit this season, but as a whole, he's been pretty rubbish ever since we signed him as the Australian. He's Australian, I should have known, obviously, with that being the case. And also there, Henning, he's been quite good since coming in, but some poor work from him. So we'll take off there both of our wingbacks and also bring on Fernandes at left wing and make sure that he can ease off tackles. But it does mean that we'll chuck Patera out to left back because Cuervo will move to centre back. And obviously Jimenez does come on there for Rollins, who is very rocks and diamonds this season. To be fair, last season it was mostly rocks. At least this season he's showing a little bit more. But unfortunately, that first attack from Wolfsburg, and we go 1-0 down. And again here, they are on the ball. Let's see what happens. Jimenez there wins the ball back, and then he has a brain explosion. Our right backs here are having a shocker in this game, and we go down to 10 minutes already. We were getting FM'd. That's not about to improve, I dare say. We're still quite dominant in this game stats-wise. Just can't put the ball in the back of the net. But now we need to find someone here who can cover right back. And actually, LaRosa might not be the worst there. So we're going to move him there to right back. And with that in mind, we'll bring on Mensah off of the bench because he a lot better as a defensive midfielder than someone like Adama Kamara. So we'll play the rest of this game without a more attacking midfielder, seeing as Jimenez has copped that red card. But obviously, that's going to impact our chances here rather largely. And unfortunately, Wolfsburg on the attack only a few minutes off back of that red card. They float a ball far post, and Vapotnik will put that one away. A player I'm pretty sure has scored against us quite a bit so far up in the Bundesliga when we're taking on Wolfsburg. And that red card, it looks like it's going to prove really costly. We'll go taking early because I'm not too sure if we have too many other options. But our wingbacks today are proving quite costly. Their work in this game, can't blame LaRosa too much for that one. He's not usually out there, but even then, a defensive midfielder, you think he could mark. Unfortunately, can't stop that cross despite the fact that's an instruction that we've turned on these days. Late on, we'll chuck all these wide players here onto attack, but really, it's a bit of a Hail Mary. We'll put here our defensive midfielder a bit further forward again and onto support. We'll chuck there Schneider onto attack as that centre mid. Go for higher tempo, be more expressive, go a bit wider, and also in transition, distribute quickly. And we've gone attacking already, but that red card costly. And before then, the fact that somehow we went 1-0 down. So unfortunately, feels like here we're copping a pretty big FMing. And that doesn't help. Schneider now forced from the field with an injury. We're down to 9 men. No chance we win this one. Fingers crossed we actually find a way here to keep it at only 2-0. But unfortunately, doesn't look like a deep run in the DFB-Pokal this season, which is very disappointing off the back of last year, where that Lingvar howler allowed Bayern to come back late and beat us. That time it's probably on me with the rotation, but you saw the condition of our first team going into this game. Didn't really have much of a choice, in seeing as how well these guys were going in the Conference League. I thought would be okay, especially with how well this 4-3-3 has been going. But unfortunately now, it's back-to-back games in the session I'm playing where we haven't scored, and that time it's a little bit more annoying because stats-wise we were quite good. The Freiburg game could kind of cop that one, even though that was bottom of the league. Maybe need to restart my computer because something weird's going on with our form. But unfortunately, a red card and a bit of an FMing there as we suffer a 2-0 defeat to Wolfsburg in only the second round of the Cup. So definitely not the result we were after there. First up in today's episode, a 2-0 defeat in only the second round of the DFB-Pokal. Now only a few days later, got to switch our attention to this RB Leipzig team who so far in the save have really kept us quiet both times that we've taken them on. To be fair, these days, a new manager, which usually might be a good thing, apart from its Jürgen Klopp's, obviously, that might actually make things a bit more difficult here with this RB Leipzig team. He looks a 4-3-3, so do we. To be fair, our analysts for this game did suggest that we do go with a 4-2-3-1, We'll start it off though with the 4-3-3. As you saw in that Wolfsburg game, actually stats-wise weren't performing too badly. Thankfully, a lot of first-teamers that we can bring back for this game as well. So that rest that we did going into that first game did kind of pay off, apart from the fact that we tried to do that, of course, for the Conference League, and then they stuffed things up against Freiburg last time out. So fingers crossed here we can actually pick up a result, even though this one is away from home. And the one change to our regular best 11, that's that Hudden is in there alongside Ruslan, because unfortunately, seeing as we used Cuervo quite early in that previous game with some defenders struggling, he's down there on a heavy workload outside of the reserves, and also on the bench, a couple of different names than expected, because some of those players who played in the cup game are now in that same situation our first team was for that trip to Wolfsburg. But fingers crossed here, the 4-3-3, it can fire. But if it doesn't, then we might have to go back to switching our tactics depending on the opposition, because so far in the session, not looking too good here with this 4-3-3. It had been a goal machine up until these last two games, obviously apart from Dortmund in yesterday's episode. But yeah, pretty poor so far. That red card didn't help in that previous game, as did that late injury. And as it turns out, it's a pretty blooming serious injury. Zeno Schneier, you might not see him for the rest of the season, give or take. A broken ankle, out for 3 to 5 months. So that just compounded our misery there from that early exit in the DFB-Pokal. It does mean that Tygo Land goes back to being a centre mid instead of an extra option, an advanced playmaker. But of course, Adama Kamara now is back from his injury, so we're not too bad off there as Leipzig. They have a couple of injuries themselves, but not too sure just how serious those are in terms of the importance of those players. But fingers crossed here can finally do something against the Leipzig team in this save, and especially with a much stronger team than we were able to put out for that cup game. So I'm hopeful that despite the fact we've gone out very early there in the DFB-Pokal, this might pay off long term, especially with the Conference League the way that's going. It is allowing our first team to be relatively fresh here for these Bundesliga games. We'll see when we come back, I dare say, tomorrow and take on Atlanta, if we can put out a little bit of a stronger team for that game, because really that looks like the only serious test we've got here in the Conference League this season. Should be making our way through in the top 8 regardless, depending on just how many teams go into that one with an unbeaten record. So really, our first team at the moment, they can now focus on the Bundesliga for the rest of the season, seeing as our backups did just stuff up that mini cup run that we did have. Unfortunately, did play quite well stats-wise, but unfortunately got F-end up until the red card, and from there Wolfsburg, they were all over us. So hopefully he can find a way to bounce back as we take on Leipzig, despite the fact that apparently it should be a 4-2-3-1 we do use in this game. To be, if we have adapted our 4-2-3-1, so it's pretty much the same as this 4-3-3 instruction and role-wise. So hopefully we can do decently if we have to switch to it here if the 4-3-3 doesn't work, like has been the case in those last couple of games. An early highlight here though, a nice ball there from Dawn out to Walden, heads it down nicely for Rene Muller, but unfortunately I think there he might have just straight offside before putting that one away in the bottom right corner. Indeed, Muller, he's not celebrating, he's having little fisticuffs there, it looks like, with one of the Leipzig players, but someone there was offside. In fact, it's Walden. From this ball, it's a tight call, but indeed, he was offside. So I'm not actually too sure there if Muller was also offside or if he stayed on. That might have been a double offside there, but unfortunately, we can't score a goal still against this RB Leipzig team. But to be fair, that's a bit more encouraging, I think, than the last couple of times that we've taken them on last season in the Bundesliga. Albeit, as I say that, down the other end here for a corner to Leipzig, they put that one far post, and thankfully, that one just gets cleared off the line, albeit Engels does get off a shot, but a good block there, and also he was offside, so it does remain 0-0. So far, the only team to put the ball in the back of the net, albeit from an offside position, is now Leipzig have another corner again. That's a bit of a dangerous ball in there at the near post that time, but thankfully it just goes over the bar, but off the back of that early goal that did get ruled out. It's Leipzig here who are all over us. Of course, a couple of players here that we're very familiar with from our RB Klopp bot save, where the Klopp bot told us who to sign with this Leipzig team. It's a little bit funny here that we take them on with Jürgen Klopp in charge, but Engels here on the attack for Leipzig off the back of that offside goal. They've been all over us on Reek. He just makes his way there back outside the box. It's a nice pullback there. Somehow defenders lose the man there inside the box, but thankfully a big save there from Olusu Adolu does keep it at 0-0 the corner. Thankfully we can deal with Jimenez though. Doesn't quite win the race to that ball Still a bit annoyed at him for that red card from that previous game. But to be fair, if Rawlins wasn't so toilet, wouldn't have had to bring him on. But again, here it's Leipzig who do have a highlight usually. If we make our way past the half-hour mark, not too bad here with our tactics at Jahn Regensburg, but unfortunately that hasn't changed here. 10 minutes shy of half-time, and Henri gets slowed through nicely, can put that one away. And so far in this game, we've been pretty poor. That goal's been coming, and so far today the 4-3-3 has been pretty rubbish. So I think he will switch to that 4-2-3-1, just see if that might make a difference, because Leipzig, they certainly have our number. Unfortunately there, I think it was Hübner who got occupied by the other man up front. And did allow Henri there to make his way through and make it 1-0, but that goal, as I said, have been coming. So fingers crossed here a switch to the 4-2-3-1 might help, albeit Jimenez not on the field currently. That doesn't help, albeit as I say that, he makes his way back on him. Thankfully, we do win that ball back here and try and get something going down that right-hand side. Jimenez, he is back on the ball, plays in there to Ruslan, and now Hübner all the way up there to Fernandes. It's a terrible back pass though. Tresoldi is on the ball here for Leipzig. A ball over the top. Tresoldi puts it away on the volley, albeit hopefully he did just stray offside, as the assistant referee is suggesting that would have been horrible there from Hübner if that one did get scored, but thankfully a bit of a get out of jail card for him there, as Tresoldi indeed did just straight offside. Good work there from Ruslan to make up for our other centre-backs errors. So far looking pretty shaky defensively here in this game, and quite a few players out there who are sucking something shocking, as tends to be the case for some reason when we take on this Leipzig team. So I dare say actually a ton of changes here at half-time. Both our wing-backs, they'll come off. So Rawlins, don't let me down this time, and Henning at left-back. Also Mensah will come on there for Lopez. We'll bring on Lazar for Walden, who's not doing too well, and Tygo Land for Haasman, who's also not had a good first half. So all 5 subs used there at half-time. Let's see if hopefully that might get our guys going as well, as a bit of a rev up here at half-time, because that was a pretty poor first half. I'll even tell the guys here, not happy with how they're doing in both defence and attack. Our midfielders, we've given a bit of a free pass. They're not too sure if we should have allowed that, but let's see if a bit of a telling off there at halftime does work. It was what I used in that 5-2 win over Wolfsburg, and certainly did improve our defence during the second half. Now, terrible work from Leipzig at the back, but Lewis Walden, who we chucked up front, actually, for some reason I said we took him off. It was Muller who came off there, so we put Walden up front and put on Lazar, but maybe I shouldn't have, because, yeah, that was a shocker from Walden, an open net, and he missed the targets. That really should have been 1-1. Leipzig hold on to their 1-0 lead, but maybe that's a sign this 4-2-3-1 might do a little bit better here in the second half, as Leipzig, they are on the ball there off the back of a highlight that did start inside of their final third. But so far, actually, putting a pretty good press on them here with this 4-2-3-1 these days, with that higher defensive line and that higher line of engagement up front as well. So let's see if we can put some more pressure on them and try and create a similar chance there to that one that Walden did just blow something shocking. That's one of the misses of the season. And yeah, that's going to be pretty embarrassing come the end of season awards. But hopefully now a chance for him to make up for that one before. And this time he hits the woodwork and was offside anyway. So unfortunately Walden not going too well here early in the second half, as we continue to struggle to score against this Leipzig team. But now a set piece here looking for Ruslan at the near post. Unfortunately hit it away. Actually a decent chance here for Leipzig on the counter-attack. If they score here, I dare say there will be game over, but thankfully a few players up there, they were offside from that through ball. That might have also been from Tresoldi, so it does mean that we get the ball back there for our goalkeeper, pumps it deep, and unfortunately Leipzig win that one there in the air. Tresoldi tries to do some good work, but Ruslan actually recovers quite nicely there and gets us back on the ball. Some nice passing down our left-hand side. Thankfully Henning actually makes up there for a little bit of a loose one, and we get back on the ball. Walden back there to Mensah. We find lots of space here down our right-hand side. Joshua Rawlins, what can he do in this game? Squares it nicely for Fabrizio Lucchini, who puts it away. Thankfully, Rawlins has done something good on camera for once. The Australian, thank you, because it's about blooming time, and we make it 1-1. So finally, we've scored here against RB Leipzig. Lucchini just beats the Van der Voort at that near post, and we make it 1-1. Definitely should be the scoreline with that big chance that Walden had there earlier in that second half, but thankfully we have finally equalised. So hopefully now might have a little bit of momentum on our side, albeit I say that, stats-wise, Leipzig are still all over us, and now a throw for them here inside of the final third. Beltran will curve that one around Owusu Adoro. In fact, it's Beltran, but either way they've scored. We're not level for long. They make it 2-1. So Leipzig continue to be a team that we just find impossible to beat here in the save. It's another set piece that they take edge of the box. A couple of goals now we've conceded in a similar way the last couple of episodes. We're just not marking there on the edge of the box for some reason, and it's proving super costly. So unfortunately, Leipzig, they do make it 2-1 with only 10 minutes left like we did in that Wolfsburg game. Now time for us here to go a bit higher tempo, not be disciplined. We won't go expressive yet because we're well and truly still in this game, only 1 goal down, but we will go a bit more attacking in terms of our roles, and also we might be a bit more attacking as well in terms of our mentality. So we'll see if that makes a difference here late on in this game. Will be to highlight as those changes are about to go through in Leipzig here. They are on the ball. Truzoldi does start to make his way forward, plays it in there to Engels, and now goes back to Rafa Baumgartner. Will find the goal scorer in Beltran in space there down the left-hand side. Let's see if this highlight does amount to something. Thankfully, that shot there from Baumgartner does get blocked. We nearly win the ball back there up high through Lewis Walden. It is again Leipzig who are on the attack, and to be fair, a good chance there. Engels gets a shot off. Our goalkeeper does come up with a good save. It continues though, and Lazar finally with a tackle to bring that to an end. But unfortunately, Leipzig continue to have the wood over us here in the save. Can we find a way late now that we've gone full out attack to actually grab a goal back in this game? Not looking likely, albeit a late throw in here inside of the final third. It is Land there on the ball. Him and Henning play it between each other. Fernandes will find Roland to squeeze it again for Lucchini. The Australian is actually quite decent in this game. It's one of the very few times so far since we signed him just under a year ago, and somehow we've equalised. Maybe going to finally take some points off Leipzig in this save. We make it 2-2 Rollins. It's a pretty similar ball to the one from earlier, but this time a bit further back in Lucchini. I think that shot there took a pretty decent deflection, but hopefully that earns us a point. Indeed it does. This is definitely the switch there to the 4-2-3-1. Feels like it's helped us out there in starting to score some goals. So maybe we need to go back there just seeing what our analyst does recommend between that 4-3-3 and the 4-2-3-1, because that was a pretty poor start there with the 4-3-3 off the back of that goal that got ruled out for offside. Leipzig were all over us there in that first half. Finally got a goal. We switched to the 4-2-3-1 and started to make our way back into that game. Thankfully, just did enough there through that late goal to Lucchini, who picks up a double to make it 2-2. So not too bad there. It does mean that we'll keep ourselves above Leipzig off the back of this match day, and hopefully as well still inside of a Champions League qualifying spot inside of the top 4 here in the Bundesliga, as eventually hopefully we'll make our way through this processing. And indeed we do. Lucchini, a very good performance, as was the case with Rollins for one of the first times it feels like so far in the save, because up until then had been pretty blimmin' average, but thankfully he helps us out there alongside Lucchini to earn a point at Leipzig. So unfortunately that 4-3-3 I thought might be our saviour here at Jahn Regensburg wasn't really firing during the course of today's episode, but just in time there at Leipzig we did switch to the 4-2-3-1 and just did enough there thanks to Lucchini to pick up a 2-2 draw, and it does mean we keep ourselves in 4th there on the Bundesliga table, 1 point clear of Leipzig, but of course by Leverkusen, a couple of games in hand, as do Leipzig, Gladbach, Wolfsburg and Hoffenheim have, so that could change quite quickly once those games in hand they do get played. But currently we're not doing too badly with only our 3 wins from 11 games, but thankfully this season, I've said it a few times now, we're not losing nearly as much as we did last season, so hopefully soon can turn a few more of those draws into wins. And with our schedule coming up off the back of today's episode, hopefully that will be the case. A little injury there from that game. Jimenez with a bruised knee. He's only out though for 2 to 3 days, so should be back in time for that Dudelange game, which to be fair, he'll have to play because Rollins got a red card in our last Conference League game, so fingers crossed Jimenez will be fit in time for that Conference League game. But surely that's another easy 3 points. Might even be able to put out there a under-19 right back, because they've been getting thumped so far apart from one game in qualifying that they did win the first leg of. Obviously though, must have got in through a penalty shootout, and also they got beaten 4-0 by the New Saints, so we should be thrashing them. But that will do it for today's episode. As I said, a little bit poor there with the 4-3-3, especially in that cup game. Not too sure what happened there, a little bit of FMing, and of course that red card to Jimenez. But if you enjoyed that pain, thankfully a little bit better there with that 2-2 draw at Leipzig, then do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up, on the video, and if you haven't done so already and are enjoying the series here on the channel, also make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn that notification bell as well. Now, as I said, a lot of easy games coming up here for us in the next month or so. Dulanga gets backed up by Bochum in 17th, Union Berlin in 13th. We've then got Sepsi in the Conference League all the way down in 30th. To be fair, a draw so far, as I said it would be, is very, very easy. In December, we've got Heidenheim, their bottom, and Schalke in 15th. So I think we'll actually make our way for a fair bit off camera before we come back for tomorrow's episode. That Atlanta game really our only tough one in the league phase of the Conference League. So we'll see how that goes. Our first big test in Europe here with Jahn Regensburg. Not too sure what we'll do around that. Cologne could be interesting. They're not that bad, albeit this season have slipped down off the back of a hot start to 10th. And also, if we do get ourselves in trouble with that Atlanta result, maybe that trumps the game might also be interesting. And of course, last season in December, that was when we got a bunch of job interview offers. So not too sure if it'll just be 1 or 2 games in tomorrow's episode. Probably depends on what does happen in that Conference League clash with Atlanta and what the table does look like off the back of that game. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Keep on keeping on, and I'll see you then. Cheers.